Hello and welcome to the audio, video and photography channel. I'm Nigel Cooper and today I'm going to be giving you 8 tips to help you achieve better vocal recordings. So if you're a podcaster, a YouTuber, or you do any kind of live webinars or voiceover work, hopefully you'll find these tips useful. So let's jump right into the video with tip number 1, which is get the best quality audio into your microphone before you even hit the record button. And by that, what I mean is you want to get anything noisy that's in the room out of the room. So if you've got any fans or air conditioners or even a buzzing fridge, anything like that, get them out of the room if possible before you start the recording. And also close all doors and windows because you don't want your microphone to be picking up any screaming kids that are in the park across the way or any traffic that might be buzzing up and down the road outside your house. Now, if you can't get a certain object out of your house, you might have a sort of a permanently fixed air conditioning unit that you can't turn off. Then what you want to do in that case is use the polar patterns on your microphone and get the cardioid pattern to work for you. And any noisy objects, place them in the dead zone of the microphone. Now, this microphone I'm using here, it's a Samsung G-Track Pro. It's got 3 polar patterns. It's got an omnidirectional pattern, which means it picks up sound from all around. It's got a figure of 8 pattern, which means it picks up sounds from both the front and the back of the microphone. And it's got the cardioid pattern, which only picks up sounds from the front, which will then reject sounds from the side and the back. So if you've got your microphone in cardioid pattern and you have a noisy object, then aim the back of the microphone towards that noisy object so that it's going to reject most of that sound. So that's tip number 1. Now, tip number 2 is make sure the correct microphone is set. Now, I know this sounds silly, but about 6 months back, a friend of mine phoned me up after buying a new Rode microphone and told me that the quality of it was no better than a cheap microphone built into his iMac. And the reason for that is because he hadn't actually gone into the preferences and deselected the internal microphone and selected the new one. So he was still recording to the old microphone, the built-in one on the iMac. So a way of actually checking to make sure you got the right microphone selected is to just scratch the mesh grill on the microphone you're using. It's only a very quiet noise, and while you do that, watch the view meters on the computer and you will see them move. Any other microphones won't pick up that scratching sound because it's too quiet, but it's close enough to the capsule in the microphone to actually register and make those meters move. So that's a good way of checking to make sure you got the correct microphone selected. Okay, tip number 3, set your levels correctly. Now again, this may sound obvious, but if you've got your level set too high, there's a chance you might get clipping or digital distortion. And we all know that digital distortion sounds horrendous. And once you've actually got that recorded, there's nothing you can do in post-production to get rid of it. Likewise, if you've got your audio levels set too low, of course, you can always boost them in post-production, but by boosting those levels, you're also going to be boosting the noise floor. So your signal to noise ratio might take a little bit of a hit as more noise gets introduced instead of signal. So for spoken word or just talking like I am now, you want to be aiming for about minus 12 dB. And for the peaks, you can go to about minus 3, and for any softly spoken quiet parts, about minus 18, but aim for about minus 12 as a good general starting point. Okay, tip number 4, speak into the correct side of the microphone. Again, this sounds obvious, but if you've got a microphone like this, which is a cardioid pattern microphone, it only picks up sounds from the front and rejects sounds from the side and the back. So for example, if I speak into the side of the microphone like this, it's not going to sound as good as if I'm speaking into the front. And worse still, as I come round to the back of the microphone, I'm hardly going to get anything at all. Now, I've seen a lot of YouTubers that own the Blue Yeti microphone and they're actually speaking into the top of it rather than the front. You've got to remember, if you're a Blue Yeti owner, those microphones are actually side address microphones, meaning you speak into the side of it. It's not actually an end address microphone. So you can do a quick proximity test to find out which is the correct side to speak into by actually turning the microphone around as you talk and say which side you're speaking into. For example, I'm now speaking into the front of the microphone. I'm now speaking into the side of the microphone. I'm now speaking into the back of the microphone. And then when you listen back to that recording, you will be able to hear which sounds the best. Alternatively, you can look in the manual that came with your microphone and that will tell you which is the correct side to speak into. Okay, tip number 5, keep still while talking. I see a lot of people bobbing their heads around and moving, and this has a detrimental effect on not only the levels but the tone. So I'm speaking here with my microphone about 4 inches away from my mouth, and I generally try to keep my head as still as possible, because if you bob around or you're moving backwards like this, and we're still looking away from the microphone while you're talking, looking around the room, as you move further away and closer to the microphone, then the tone will suffer as well as the levels, because as you move further away like this, the sound is going to get thinner and you're going to get less levels, whereas when you move closer, there's going to be more bass, your voice is going to sound thicker and the levels will be higher. But while you're bobbing around like this and looking around the room, everything's going to go all over the place and it will be distracting for the listeners. So try and keep your head as still as possible in relation to the microphone while you're talking. Okay, tip number 6, get the microphone off the desk. Now, most USB microphones like this one, they will come with a tiny little tripod type desk stand, but the trouble is they don't do a very good job of rejecting noise such as keyboard typing. If you're doing a webinar and you've got to type at the same time as talking, it will pick all that up. Likewise, if you rest your arms on the desk, your elbows, it's going to pick up all those bumps. So get a desk boom stand like this one, preferably with a shock mount on the end that you mount the microphone into. I don't actually have one here because I never do anything that requires me to type, and I try not to bang my elbows and hands on the desk too much while I'm giving any kind of talk. So that's the next tip. Number 7, avoid plosives. Now, plosives are those little popping sounds that you get that get picked up by the microphone when you speak words beginning with B and P typically. Now, I'm just going to give you an example of this. I've got a little line queued up. At the moment, I'm speaking across the microphone, but I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. So firstly, let me just give you a demonstration of the popping sounds. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Now, as you can hear there, every time I say a word beginning with P, I get that horrible burst of air that hits the diaphragm of the mic capsule, and causes that plosive. Now, there's various ways you can get rid of it. You can actually use these pop shields. Now, this particular one is made by Samsung, and it's one that's basically got 2 little layers of material over it. Now, these do a good job. They work pretty well. They get you about 70% of the way there. But for me, by far the best one is this one. It's made by a company called Stedman. That's Stedman. I'll put a link in the description below. But the reason this one is by far the best one is because unlike these ones that have just got the cloth over them, where the air still goes through, but it just reduces it, this is a very clever mesh design in that the way this is stamped, the holes in this actually aim downwards. So when the air hits it from the side, when it comes out the other side, it actually forces it to go down. So it comes across and then down, so that you're not going to get something go straight through and hitting the microphone. It works really well. Now, just going to give you a quick demonstration of this so you can hear. So I'm going to do it without and with, so you can hear the difference. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. 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 So hopefully you can hear what kind of a difference that made. Now, I don't actually feel the need to use a pop filter for most of what I do, because what I do, instead of having the microphone angled directly towards my face square on like this, and if I give you another demonstration square on, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. If I actually move the microphone off to the side and turn it at a 45-degree angle to my face and aim it towards the corner of my mouth, then I don't get those plosives. So if I say it again, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, you can hear that I don't get any of those plosive sounds. So this is a good tip. It doesn't have any detrimental on the sonic or audio quality of the microphone, but it just reduces the plosives as you're speaking slightly across the microphone and not directly into it. Okay, tip number 8, working in untreated rooms. Now, as you can see behind me here, I've got these little foam acoustic treatment pads stuck up on the walls. This actually cost about £300 for this set, and I've got them all around the room with some bass traps in the corners as well. Now, a lot of people make the mistake when they're treating a room to cover it 100%. Every inch of wall space, they cover it. Now, this is not a good idea in my opinion, because it makes the room too dead and too dry. And in post-production, you've got to start adding a bit of reverb to bring it back to make it sound natural. So my general rule is, and I've read this in several places around the net, is to basically aim for about 60% coverage, leaving about 40% of the wall bare. That way you're going to basically deaden out a lot of that sound and the room reverb, but it's still going to have a hint of naturalness. Now, where you place them, that's a different video. If you're doing any kind of audio editing, we all know that depending on where you've got your monitors positioned, you have to avoid reflection points and so on and so forth. But like I said, that's another video and not something to get into now. If you can't afford room treatment like what I've got here, you can just use old duvets and blankets and sheets and just hang them up on the walls, and that will do a very good job also. Finally, you can actually use a walk-in wardrobe or a closet as long as it's only audio you're recording and not video. Because if you put the microphone in the closet with all the clothes hanging up around it and you basically put your head into the closet, as you're speaking, your vocals and speaking words are not going to bounce around off all the walls. They're going to get absorbed by the clothes that are hanging up in the wardrobe or closet. So that's another tip there. So that's the 8 tips for getting better vocal recordings. I hope you enjoyed this video. As usual, thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you again real soon.